Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, today I want to share with you something that will shake your heart, something that has been whispered in silence for decades but rarely spoken out loud. A hidden prophecy connected to the visions of the Virgin Mary in Medjugorje, but now reaching across oceans, across generations, to our own homeland here in America. The message speaks of 3 days. Not ordinary days, but days when the world itself will stop, when the sun and moon will be veiled, when the familiar order of life in our towns and cities will be broken. 3 days of darkness. 3 days when the earth will tremble with silence, and every family will be tested in their faith. And these days, brothers and sisters, are not far away in some abstract future. They have been marked, the 30th, the 31st, and the 1st. Can you imagine it? The lights of New York suddenly going out, skyscrapers swallowed in darkness, the quiet fields of Iowa covered in silence as the wind stops blowing, the deserts of Arizona under a sky blacker than midnight, with no stars above, the coastlines from California to Florida wrapped in a strange night that will not end. These will be the days when every American home, every heart, will face the same question. Do I belong to the light, or will I surrender to the shadows? The Virgin has said over and over again, do not be afraid, prepare. These days are not sent as senseless punishment, but as purification. Just like the storms our nation has endured, hurricanes, wildfires, floods, these 3 days will be a storm of the Spirit, cleansing the soul. And when the darkness comes, the only light will be the one we carry in prayer, in candles blessed by faith, in the Word of God opened on our tables. Friends, imagine families gathering in living rooms across the country, in Chicago apartments, in Texas farmhouses, in cabins up in the Rockies, parents holding rosaries, children whispering Hail Marys, candles burning as signs of hope. Outside, silence will reign. But inside, those homes will shine brighter than any lamp, because the Virgin promised, where my children pray, there I am present. Type in the comments, Mary, be my light in the darkness. Don't be shy. Declare it boldly, because your words may strengthen someone else in a moment of fear. The 3 days are not the end. They are a passage. Just as dawn follows the longest night, these days will prepare America and the world for a renewal, a rebirth. But the choice is ours, whether to live them with fear and despair or with faith and trust, brothers and sisters. When we hear about the 3 days of darkness, it's easy to imagine only a physical blackout. Streets empty, power grids down, the sky covered in a strange black veil. But the Virgin's message from Medjugorje and the echo we feel here in America is that these days will not be just about the absence of sunlight. They will be a spiritual test, a mirror for every soul. Think about it. In the United States, we are so used to noise, to movement, to screens glowing 24/7. Our cities never truly sleep. Times Square is lit brighter at midnight than some towns at noon. But imagine if suddenly all of that vanished. No neon lights, no buzzing highways, no glowing phones, just silence, just darkness, just you and your heart. What would remain? What would rise to the surface of your soul? That's the core of this prophecy. When the familiar disappears, you will face yourself and God without filters. The Virgin has said, do not fear, but be prepared. She is not warning us to terrify us, but to invite us into purification. The 3 days are not the destruction of America or the end of the world. They are a refining fire, a reset of the heart. Picture this: a family in a suburban home in Ohio. Dad usually comes back tired from work, Mom busy with chores, kids glued to devices. But in those 3 days, everything changes. They sit together at the kitchen table, a single blessed candle burning, a Bible open to the Psalms. Voices shaky at first, but growing steady as they pray the rosary. Outside, neighbors scream or fall into panic, but inside that house there is peace. Why? Because when the lights of the world go out, the light of prayer shines brightest. Type in the comments, "My faith will be my lamp." Declare it, because that's exactly what the Virgin calls us to prepare now, so that in the silence of those days our faith will burn steady like an oil lamp that never runs out. Friends, the Virgin's messages remind us that these days will divide hearts. Some will curse the darkness, while others will discover God in it. Some will panic, running from house to house, while others will stay rooted, calm, praying with confidence. The difference will not be who has more supplies, more candles, or more plans. It will be who has faith. The darkness is not just a test, it is a threshold. Just as America has endured dark nights of history, wars, economic collapses, September 11th, yet always emerged changed, so too this will be a spiritual 9/11, a moment when nothing will ever be the same again. The Virgin is telling us now, be ready, so that when it comes, you stand not with fear, but with courage. Across the nation, from New England chapels to Texas megachurches, from quiet farm towns in the Dakotas to bustling Los Angeles, prayer will become the dividing line. Homes with rosaries will glow like beacons. Families who kneel together will feel the protection of angels. And homes without faith will feel heavier than ever as despair seeps in through the cracks. Brothers and sisters, the Virgin is asking us to practice now. To unplug sometimes, to embrace silence, to light a candle and pray with our children. Because those 3 days will reveal the truth. When the noise is gone, what remains in your soul? Is it faith or fear? Is it light or shadow? Ascribe, write in the comments, "Mary, prepare my heart." Because the act of writing it isn't just for you, it's a seed of faith for someone scrolling by, someone lost, someone afraid. Your witness could be the reason another person finds strength when the darkness comes. Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, whenever heaven speaks through the Virgin Mary, especially in Medjugorje, it is never to scare us, it is to prepare us. These 3 days of darkness will not be survived by panic or by wealth or by running away. They will be endured through faith, prayer, and unity at home. Think about how life looks right now in America. We have built routines of comfort. The hum of the refrigerator, the glow of the TV, the buzz of traffic on the highway, the constant signal of cell phones. But in the 3 days of darkness, all of that will vanish. Power grids will shut down, devices will go black, cities will fall into silence. The only refuge will be inside your home, turned into a small sanctuary. The Virgin's call is clear. Do not wait for the darkness to prepare. Begin now. What does that mean for us, here in the US? Well, it means families must return to prayer. Not once a week at church, not just when something bad happens, but daily. A rosary prayed in the living room, a Bible opened at the dining table, a candle lit with reverence. These small habits will become pillars of strength. Imagine your home in the Midwest, on a quiet street in Indiana or Kansas. The outside world falls into fear, but your children hold rosaries, your spouse reads Psalm 23, and you feel angels standing guard around your door. That is the preparation Mary is asking for. It also means we must embrace reconciliation. What good is it to stock up on candles if your family is filled with bitterness? What use is blessed water if your heart is dry with unforgiveness? Brothers and sisters, the Virgin calls us to forgive our spouses, our children, our neighbors, even ourselves. Because in the silence of those days, every unhealed wound will echo louder than thunder. But every word of forgiveness will shine brighter than the sun. Write in the comments, "My family will prepare in prayer." Proclaim it not just for yourself, but to inspire others who may still be asleep. Yes, there are physical preparations too. The Virgin has spoken about blessed candles, light that will not go out during the 3 days. Have one in your home, not as superstition, but as a sign of faith. When the darkness falls on New York or Dallas, on Los Angeles or a farmhouse in Nebraska, that single candle will say, "We belong to the light." Keep holy water at hand as well, to bless your house, your children, your doorways. These are not just rituals, they are reminders that heaven is with us. But above all, the preparation is spiritual. Because what good is it if you have 100 candles but no prayer? What good is food if there is no faith? The true preparation is conversion. Going to confession, returning to church, reconciling with God in the Eucharist, making your home a place of prayer even before the darkness arrives. Brothers and sisters, picture this: the highways empty, the neighborhoods dark, the cities silent, and in the midst of it a small house in Ohio, a trailer in Alabama, an apartment in New York, glowing softly with candlelight, filled with voices whispering Hail Marys. That is the vision of preparation, not fear, not panic, faith. This is why the Virgin urges us to practice now. Gather your family this very week, light a candle in the evening, turn off the screens and pray together. Teach your children to hold the rosary, read the Psalms aloud, learn to sit in silence together. Because when the darkness comes, these practices will not feel foreign, they will be your lifeline. Write in the comments, "Mary, prepare my home." Every comment is like a spark, and together, sparks become fire. Brothers and sisters, America is a land of resilience. We've survived hurricanes on the Gulf Coast, blizzards in the north, tornadoes in the Midwest, wildfires in the West, but those are storms of nature. The 3 days will be a storm of the soul. And the preparation we need is not bottled water and generators, but prayer and forgiveness. Those are the supplies that will endure. Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, as the calendar crept closer to September 30th, a strange tension spread across the United States. News outlets buzzed with speculation, social media was flooded with debates, and even casual conversations at diners, schools, and workplaces turned to the same question: what if the prophecy is real? In small towns across the Midwest, prayer groups began to gather every evening. Farmers left their fields early. Families closed their shops. Neighbors carried folding chairs into living rooms to pray the rosary together. The sound of soft voices whispering Hail Marys began to rise like incense from Kansas to Iowa, from the Dakotas to Missouri. People who had not set foot in church for years returned, moved by a quiet conviction that something extraordinary was coming. Meanwhile, in cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, the reaction was mixed. Some faithful gathered in packed cathedrals, lighting candles and kneeling in silence. Others mocked them openly. Comedians on late-night shows joked about 3 days of lights out. Professors in universities dismissed it as hysteria. Politicians assured the public that there was nothing to fear and spoke of natural phenomena, offering complicated scientific jargon to calm the masses. Yet even as they mocked, the unease in their eyes betrayed them. The Virgin's prophecy began to divide America, not by race, politics, or wealth, but by faith. On one side stood families preparing quietly, buying blessed candles, dusting off family Bibles, kneeling together at night. On the other side stood skeptics who laughed, scrolled past, and went about life as usual. The line grew sharper each day. Write in the comments, "My nation belongs to the light." Proclaim it with courage, because America is being tested not just by storms of weather, but by storms of the Spirit. As September wore on, strange signs began to unsettle even the most skeptical. Birds stopped singing some mornings. A stillness fell across neighborhoods, as though the very air was holding its breath. Farmers noticed their animals acting restless. Dogs howled at night without reason. Fishermen in New England spoke of tides behaving strangely, rising higher than usual, receding too fast. It felt as if creation itself was warning of something near. In churches across the South, pastors and priests preached to packed pews, warning their people to prepare. In Texas, families held outdoor vigils under the wide open sky, rosaries glowing in their hands. In the Appalachian Mountains, small communities huddled together, reading scripture by lantern light. Yet in Silicon Valley, in the skyscrapers of Wall Street, in the corridors of Washington, D.C., powerful voices scoffed, ridiculing the faithful as fearmongers. The division was not only public, it cut through families. In suburban homes, mothers pleaded with their children to pray, while teenagers rolled their eyes and scrolled their phones. Husbands mocked their wives' candles and rosaries, while wives whispered prayers for their husbands' conversion. Thanksgiving tables turned tense as relatives argued, faith on one side, ridicule on the other. It was a mirror of America's soul. The prophecy forced everyone to choose, even within their own homes. Brothers and sisters, the Virgin had said in Medjugorje, "The time will come when every person must decide. Neutrality will no longer exist." That time had arrived. America itself was the stage of a great separation. Not red or blue states, not north or south, but light and darkness. As September 30th drew near, news anchors spoke nervously, balancing between skepticism and fear. Unusual celestial alignments were reported. Scientists warned of geomagnetic disturbances. But ordinary Americans knew this was no natural fluke. A mother in Florida lit her candle. A farmer in Nebraska whispered a prayer in his barn. A trucker on the highway across Route 66 clutched a rosary on his dashboard. Faith was quietly taking root everywhere. Write in the comments, "Mary, America is yours." Every declaration strengthens the shield of faith over this land. And so the stage was set. The countdown to the 30th had begun. Some homes were ready, cleaned by confession, filled with prayer, armed with faith. Others laughed, ridiculed, and ignored. The air grew heavy, the skies dimmed, and across the nation hearts beat faster, sensing the approach of something that could no longer be stopped. Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, the day finally came. September 30th dawned across America, but it was not a normal morning. From the eastern seaboard to the Pacific coast, from the pine forests of Maine to the deserts of Arizona, people woke with a strange sense that something in the air had shifted. The sunrise was dim, as if a veil hung across the horizon. Birds that normally filled the morning with song were silent. In neighborhoods across the Midwest, people stood on porches with coffee mugs in hand, staring at a sky that looked pale and metallic. Farmers in Kansas noticed their cattle restless, pacing instead of grazing. In cities like New York and Chicago, commuters whispered that the light of day seemed weaker, the streets quieter, as though the world itself was holding its breath. It was the first day of the prophecy. Some families gathered in prayer right away. In living rooms, from Texas ranch houses to small apartments in Brooklyn, candles were lit and rosaries began. Mothers pulled children close, fathers bowed their heads. A peace filled those homes, though outside tension thickened. Others mocked and went about life. "See, nothing happened," they said as the morning passed. But deep inside, unease gnawed at their hearts. Because even if nothing dramatic had struck yet, everyone could feel the difference. The atmosphere was heavy, time seemed slower, the silence more profound. Write in the comments, "Mary, give us peace on the first day. Declare it boldly, because your prayer lifts the fear of many." By noon, signs became harder to ignore. Power flickered in major cities. In Los Angeles, entire blocks lost electricity for minutes before it returned. In the suburbs of Atlanta, stoplights failed one after another. Newscasters on television tried to calm the public, but their own voices trembled as they reported unusual disruptions in the grid. As night approached, the unease deepened. In New England, fishermen reported that the tides behaved strangely, rising higher than normal. In the Great Plains, the wind suddenly stopped, leaving the prairies eerily still. In the southwest, a blood-red hue stretched across the desert sky as the sun went down. America felt itself sliding into a silence it had never known before. And then darkness fell, not the gentle, familiar night, but a heavier kind. Houses without prayer grew restless. People knocked on neighbors' doors asking what to do. Some ran to stores, but shelves were already empty. Others sat in living rooms with TVs dead, phones without service, and no idea how to fill the void. But in homes prepared, something different happened. A single candle flickered in the living room. Families knelt, praying the rosary. The Bible lay open to the Psalms. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And as those words were spoken, peace flooded those homes. In the cities, panic rose. Sirens wailed as police tried to calm crowds. In rural towns, silence spread deeper as lights failed across the horizon. And everywhere, the same realization took root. The prophecy had begun. Brothers and sisters, the Virgin had warned, do not look outside, do not open your doors. Pray, and I will be with you. On that first night, those who obeyed felt her presence. Many testified later that they sensed Mary's mantle around their homes, like a shield of invisible light. Those who ignored the call found only confusion, anxiety, and fear. September 30th was not yet the full plunge into darkness. It was the threshold. A day when America felt heaven's hand upon it, urging every heart to choose faith or fear, light or shadow, prayer or panic. Write in the comments, "My faith is stronger than fear." Let those words be your shield, brothers and sisters, friends of the light. When October 1st dawned, the United States awoke to a silence that was no longer natural. The sun did not rise as usual. Instead, the sky hung heavy, covered by a veil so dense that not even a sliver of light could pierce through. By mid-morning, cities from coast to coast were blanketed in absolute darkness. It was unlike any blackout we had ever known. This wasn't the grid shutting down. This wasn't a storm knocking out power lines. This was the sky itself, withholding its light. The skyscrapers of Manhattan stood like dark giants against a pitch-black sky. The wheat fields of Kansas stretched into nothingness. The deserts of Nevada, usually burning under the sun, were swallowed by an endless night. America was in the grip of the prophecy. People panicked. In Los Angeles, crowds filled the streets, lighting matches, shouting, crying. In Houston, cars piled up on highways as drivers lost courage to keep going in the suffocating dark. In Chicago, grocery stores were broken into, shelves emptied by desperate hands. Fear moved faster than reason, and without faith, people crumbled. But in homes of prayer, the story was different. A candle burned steadily, casting a warm circle of light in living rooms from Pennsylvania to Texas. Families knelt together, holding rosaries, whispering prayers with trembling but faithful voices. In those homes, the Virgin's promise was fulfilled. Where my children pray, there I am present. They felt her mantle wrap around them like invisible armor. Write in the comments, "Mary, cover my family with your mantle." Proclaim it, because your faith is stronger than fear. The darkness, however, was more than physical. Soon, whispers began outside the doors. Some families reported hearing the voices of loved ones, dead relatives, neighbors, even children, calling them by name, begging them to open the door. But the Virgin had warned, "Do not look out, do not open." Those who obeyed remained safe. Those who gave in found only despair. In rural America, farmers heard pounding on barn doors, shadows moving through their fields. In cities, apartment dwellers swore they saw figures pressing against their windows. It was the great deception of the enemy, trying to lure the faithful away from their shelter of prayer. But the Virgin's voice echoed in their hearts. "Stay inside, stay in prayer, trust me." By the second day, the weight of the darkness pressed heavily. Air felt thicker, clocks seemed meaningless, some lost sense of time entirely. But in the silence, miracles happened. In Nashville, A family prayed the rosary for hours and later testified that angelic voices joined their prayers. In Colorado, a small prayer group felt an unexplainable warmth in the room, as though Mary herself stood among them. In Boston, children said they saw Saint Michael with his blazing sword standing guard outside their window. Brothers and sisters, the battle between light and shadow was no longer invisible. It was felt, it was seen, it was real. The enemy tried to sow fear, but every Hail Mary was like a sword cutting through the darkness. Every psalm read aloud was like fire against the cold night. Every family united in prayer was a fortress. Outside, the world spiraled further into chaos. People without faith tried to flee, but where could they run? Planes sat motionless on tarmacs, powerless. Ships drifted in harbors with no guiding light. Highways were littered with abandoned cars. America, a land built on speed and noise, was paralyzed in a silence so deep it echoed in the soul. But inside the homes of the faithful, something extraordinary happened. Fear turned into peace. Families who had never prayed together before found themselves clinging to one another, whispering prayers they hadn't said in decades. Children who once resisted bedtime prayers now cried out for their rosaries. The Virgin's mantle stretched across America, one home at a time, wherever hearts chose faith over fear. Write in the comments, "My house belongs to the light." Say it as a shield, as a testimony, as a declaration. And then, as the second night of darkness settled in, a new sound broke the silence, not voices of fear, but the roar of battle in the spirit. Across the nation, countless souls testified later that they heard a cry in their hearts, strong and thunderous, "Who is like God?" It was the voice of Saint Michael, the archangel, rallying heaven's army. Families repeated it aloud, "Who is like God? No one but Him." And with each repetition, shadows fled. America had entered the climax. The trial of faith was at its sharpest point. Fear was everywhere, deception lurked at every door, but so too was grace. And as October 1st closed in its heavy veil, the world stood trembling between two choices: surrender to despair or hold on to the Virgin's light. Brothers and sisters, friends of the light. October 2nd arrived, and with it, the third and final day of darkness. By now, America was weary. Families had endured 2 nights without sun, without stars, without the comfort of normal life. Anxiety weighed heavy, exhaustion gnawed at minds and bodies. The silence outside was thicker than ever, broken only by the occasional sound of pounding on doors or whispers calling names. But inside homes of prayer, the faithful pressed on. Candles still flickered, rosaries still rolled through trembling fingers, Bibles still lay open on tables. Fathers prayed aloud for their children, mothers whispered encouragement. Children who had once resisted prayer now clung to it as their lifeline. The Virgin's mantle still covered those homes, and though the world outside was dark, these families were glowing fortresses of light. In New York, where skyscrapers had become silent towers of shadow, families in high-rise apartments testified later that they felt warmth and light filling their small living rooms as they prayed. In the heart of Texas, ranchers and their families knelt in barns and kitchens, singing hymns to keep fear away. In the suburbs of California, candles burned in windows, a signal to neighbors that someone inside still believed, still prayed, still trusted. Write in the comments, "Mary, give us strength on the last day," because these words are not just words, they are shields of faith against despair. On this final day, the enemy fought hardest. Voices outside grew more desperate, more deceptive. Families heard cries mimicking loved ones, pleading to be let inside. Others saw shadows pressing harder against windows, scratching at doors. Some even swore they heard mocking laughter. The temptation to break the Virgin's command and look outside was overwhelming. But those who obeyed, those who stayed in prayer, found peace beyond explanation. By afternoon, the weight of the darkness grew unbearable. Many felt as though time itself had stopped. Without clocks, without sunlight, without movement, hours stretched like endless tunnels. But in those tunnels of silence, miracles bloomed. Families reported seeing faint golden lights flicker in their rooms, like fireflies of heaven. Children spoke of angels whispering, "It will soon be over." And countless hearts testified that they felt the Virgin's presence more clearly than ever, as though she was sitting beside them, holding their hands. Brothers and sisters, as night fell on October 2nd, a shift began. It was subtle at first. A slight thinning of the oppressive black sky, a faint glow at the edges of the horizon. Families who prayed noticed their candles burned brighter, though no more wax was consumed. Homes filled with a gentle warmth, and hope rose like a tide. For the first time in 3 days, people felt not only endurance, but expectation. In Boston, families who had prayed non-stop heard church bells begin to ring without human hands pulling the ropes. In Louisiana, prayer groups swore they saw the silhouette of St. Michael in the sky, sword lifted high. In the Midwest, entire neighborhoods erupted in tears as they felt the heaviness lift, replaced by a peace so profound it brought everyone to their knees. Write in the comments, "The dawn is coming," because faith speaks of light even before the first rays appear. Then, in the early hours of October 3rd, the breakthrough came. A thin, golden line pierced the black veil of the sky. At first faint, like the edge of a dream, but growing brighter, wider, stronger. Birds that had been silent for 3 days began to sing again. Dogs barked joyfully, cattle lowed with relief. And across America, tears flowed as people realized the prophecy was ending. When the first full rays of sunlight spilled across the land, it was not just light on the horizon, it was light in the heart. Families hugged, neighbors wept together, strangers embraced in the streets. The Virgin had kept her promise. Those who prayed had survived, those who trusted had been purified. America was not the same. The darkness had changed her forever. Some hearts were hardened, still mocking even in the face of miracles, but millions more were awakened, converted, renewed. Churches filled, confession lines stretched out the doors, prayer groups multiplied. The nation had been shaken, but in that shaking, faith was born anew. Brothers and sisters, October 2nd was the darkest of days, but also the threshold to the brightest of dawns. The Virgin's words echoed in every heart. "Do not fear, I am with you. Where my children pray, there I am present." Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, when the morning of October 3rd finally came, America opened its eyes to a land bathed in sunlight. The long night was over. Birds filled the skies with songs that hadn't been heard in 3 days. Rivers sparkled again. The breeze returned to the plains. The ocean waves rolled against the shore with renewed strength. The entire nation breathed a collective sigh of relief. But it was more than just nature coming back to life. It was hearts, souls, and spirits awakening after the greatest trial in living memory. For many, tears flowed as they stepped outside for the first time since September 30th. Parents hugged their children tighter, couples held hands in silence, elderly neighbors embraced with gratitude. Across small towns and big cities alike, from Portland, Maine to San Diego, California, people whispered the same words, "We made it." But those who had prayed knew it wasn't just survival, it was grace. It was the Virgin's mantle shielding them, the prayers whispered in living rooms, barns, and churches that had carried them through. Churches were flooded that very morning. In New Orleans, bells rang non-stop as crowds filled the cathedral, falling to their knees. In Chicago, priests couldn't keep up with the lines of confession stretching blocks down the street. In tiny chapels in Appalachia, people packed pews, crying, singing hymns, raising their hands in thanksgiving. The Virgin's prophecy had not only tested America, it had ignited a fire of faith unseen in generations. Write in the comments, "Thank you, Mary, for saving us." And let those words be your offering of gratitude, because gratitude multiplies blessings. And yet not all hearts were changed. Some emerged from the darkness harder than before. Skeptics flooded television networks with explanations, calling the event a rare atmospheric blackout or a global anomaly. Politicians spoke of natural cycles. Scientists gave long, complicated theories that contradicted each other. But deep down, the people knew. No science could explain the whispers at the doors, the voices calling names, the way blessed candles alone had burned with steady light. Still, the division that had started before the prophecy now deepened. On one side, millions were converted, families restored, children praying again, communities united in ways not seen since the darkest days of World War II or 9/11. On the other side, prideful hearts mocked, denied, and worked harder to silence the faithful. America was awake, but split in two. Brothers and sisters, miracles poured out in the days following. In Ohio, a boy paralyzed since birth walked for the first time after praying the rosary with his family during the blackout. In California, a woman who had been blind for years testified that she regained her sight while holding a candle before a statue of Mary. In Texas, doctors confirmed that a man's terminal cancer vanished after his family prayed continuously through the 3 days. These were not rumors. These were documented testimonies, undeniable for those with open eyes. But even miracles became a battleground. Believers shared them joyfully. Skeptics mocked them as placebo effects or fabricated stories. Once again, truth and lies clashed in the open. The Virgin had warned, some will believe, others will reject, but the grace will not be hidden. Write in the comments, I am a witness of the light. Because your words join the chorus of millions who refuse to stay silent. In neighborhoods across the nation, new prayer groups were born. Streets that once were quiet after work hours now echoed with hymns and the recitation of the rosary. Schools began morning prayers again, led by students who had felt heaven's hand. Families that once argued over politics or money now sat together, praying instead of watching TV. America was rediscovering what truly mattered. But persecution also rose. In cities like San Francisco and Washington, protests erupted against public prayer gatherings. Some local governments attempted to pass ordinances banning religious demonstrations in the streets. News anchors ridiculed parents for brainwashing their kids with the rosary. Social media platforms silenced testimonies, deleting videos of miracles under the excuse of misinformation. The battle had shifted from darkness outside to pressure within. Brothers and sisters, the Virgin had said, after the trial will come the mission, and so it was. The faithful who endured now understood they were not spared just to go back to normal life. They were spared to be witnesses. Every testimony mattered. Every prayer group was a fortress. Every rosary a sword in the spiritual battle still unfolding. America had awakened, but the awakening was only the beginning. Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, as the sun rose again on America after the 3 days of darkness, something extraordinary happened. Towns, neighborhoods, and entire regions began to show clearly what had taken root in their hearts. Some communities flourished, becoming beacons of prayer, unity, and miracles. Others hardened, doubling down in denial and resistance, mocking what had just shaken the entire world. America itself was now a patchwork of light and shadow. In small towns across the Midwest, prayer became as natural as breathing. In Iowa, farmers gathered every evening in open fields, bringing their families, kneeling on the soil that had fed them for generations. In Tennessee, neighbors met on porches, holding rosaries, their voices weaving together under the stars. In Wisconsin, church bells rang again, not just on Sundays, but daily, calling people to Thanksgiving. These towns glowed with peace, and testimonies poured out, healings, reconciliations, and a new sense of belonging. Meanwhile, in cities like New York and Los Angeles, the divide was sharper. Some parishes overflowed with faithful, their doors open day and night, candles flickering in endless vigils. But just blocks away, protests erupted, demanding that superstition be silenced. News anchors mocked, influencers ridiculed, and politicians used the moment to stir fear and division. Skyscrapers cast long shadows, both literally and spiritually. Some floors became chapels of prayer, others dens of denial. Write in the comments, "My community belongs to the light." Because even if your town or city feels dark, your words are a spark that can ignite renewal. In the South, the faith exploded like wildfire. In Texas, thousands filled football stadiums, not for sports, but for prayer rallies. In Georgia, choirs sang through the night, their voices carrying across hills and valleys. In Louisiana, families rebuilt neighborhoods not only with wood and nails, but with faith and love. Entire towns became living testimonies that when darkness falls, unity in God can heal the land. But in the Pacific Northwest, resistance hardened. Activist groups accused prayer movements of being dangerous. Lawsuits were filed against public gatherings. In some cities, police were sent to disperse outdoor rosary circles. Yet every attempt to silence the faithful only made them stronger. Small groups prayed in secret, in basements, in barns, in parks at midnight. And the more they were persecuted, the brighter their witness shone. Brothers and sisters, America's communities revealed their souls. Some radiated light, families helping neighbors, pastors working hand in hand with priests, miracles breaking out in ordinary kitchens and schools. Others radiated defiance, mockery, violence, and stubborn denial. It was as if the 3 days had split the soil, and now we could see clearly, wheat in one field, weeds in another. In the Appalachians, stories emerged of entire valleys glowing at night, not with electricity, but with the light of prayer. Travelers passing through swore they heard angelic singing echoing through the mountains. In contrast, in parts of the West Coast, darkness seemed to cling even after the sun returned. Not physical darkness, but a heaviness in the spirit. Streets filled with anger, communities divided deeper than ever. Write in the comments, "Lord, make my town a beacon." Because America needs lighthouses of prayer, shining coast to coast. Miracles continued to confirm the faithful. In Kentucky, a schoolteacher led her students in prayer during the 3 days. Afterward, parents testified that their children had changed. More peaceful, more compassionate, more faithful. In Arizona, a parish reported that its statue of the Virgin radiated light each night for weeks after the darkness ended. In North Dakota, farmers said their crops, thought lost, sprouted again with unusual abundance. But persecution also deepened. In California, street preachers were arrested. In Washington, lawsuits multiplied against churches accused of inciting hysteria. In Boston, prayer groups were shouted down in public squares. Communities were forced to choose, bow to pressure, or stand firm. And in those moments of decision, the faithful found courage they never knew they had. Brothers and sisters, America was no longer the same country it had been on September 29th. The 3 days had carved a line through her heart. Some places now glowed like holy ground, others hardened like stone. The Virgin had said, "Nations, towns, and families will be divided." And that prophecy was playing out on our own soil. Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, when America stepped out of the 3 days of darkness, she was not the same nation she had been on September 29th. For generations, we have argued about politics, about left and right, about red and blue. But after the prophecy, the divide cut deeper than party or ideology. It was a spiritual line. Light or shadow, truth or denial, faith or pride. The United States of America stood at a crossroads unlike any in her history. On one side, millions of ordinary Americans rose with renewed faith. Families who had once been divided by arguments now prayed together daily. Churches overflowed, not just on Sundays, but every night. Pastors and priests, often separated by denominations, began standing side by side, leading communities in unity. Across the South and Midwest, banners of the Virgin and St. Michael were carried in public processions. The Rosary echoed in stadiums where football had once dominated. America's soul was stirring with revival. On the other side, powerful voices resisted. In Washington, D.C., officials debated how to control the religious surge. Some politicians demanded new laws limiting public displays of prayer, calling them superstition. Media outlets mocked believers as unstable. Universities dismissed the darkness as collective hysteria, warning students not to fall into fanaticism. From Los Angeles to New York, cultural elites ridiculed faith even harder than before. America was split, not by geography this time, but by spirit. Write in the comments, "My nation chooses the light." Say it boldly, because America's identity is being rewritten even now. Brothers and sisters, the divisions spread quickly into every corner of culture. In schools, some principals reinstated morning prayer, saying it gave students peace after the trauma. Others banned it fiercely, threatening teachers who allowed it. In businesses, employees gathered in break rooms to pray, while executives warned against mixing religion with work. Families gathered in prayer circles outside courthouses while lawsuits raged inside. America itself became a battlefield of belief. In many states, local leaders chose faith. Governors declared days of prayer, opened state houses for worship, and stood unashamed under Mary's mantle. In Texas, lawmakers gathered on the Capitol steps, holding rosaries, singing hymns. In parts of the Midwest, town mayors marched with their communities in candlelight vigils. But in other states, leaders cracked down. California, Oregon, and parts of the Northeast passed ordinances banning unregistered religious gatherings. Police were sent to disperse prayer groups, sparking clashes in the streets. And yet, miracles kept happening. In Florida, during a massive prayer rally, hundreds swore they saw a luminous cross appear above the crowd. In Michigan, a statue of Mary wept tears of light in front of thousands. In Oklahoma, a small chapel glowed visibly through the night for weeks, drawing pilgrims from across the nation. These signs could not be dismissed, though media tried to ignore or distort them. The faithful knew heaven was still speaking. Write in the comments, "America belongs to Mary," because even if leaders resist, the nation's soul is decided in the prayers of her people. Brothers and sisters, the United States now face the greatest choice of her history. Would she embrace the renewal the Virgin was offering, allowing the 3 days of darkness to transform her into a beacon of faith for the world? Or would she harden her heart, clinging to pride, denying the miracles, silencing the faithful? This choice was not made in Congress or the White House. It was made in homes, in parishes, in schools, in hearts. The Virgin's mantle stretched across America, but the decision to stand under it remained personal. Some cities shone like lighthouses, Dallas, Nashville, Omaha, while others fought against the light, pushing it away. The nation was one land but two souls. Brothers and sisters, history teaches us that America has faced defining moments: the Revolution, the Civil War, the Great Depression, Pearl Harbor, 9/11. Each time the nation was changed forever, but this was greater still, because now the battleground was not just land or freedom, it was faith itself. Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, the enemy, shaken by the millions of conversions after the 3 days of darkness, knew he could not erase what happened. Too many had seen it with their own eyes. Too many had heard the whispers outside their doors. Too many had watched their blessed candles burn with steady light. Too many had felt the mantle of Mary covering them. He could not deny the reality, so he chose another strategy: confusion. Almost immediately, media across America began pushing explanations. Morning shows called it a rare atmospheric event. Documentaries on streaming platforms spoke of geomagnetic storms and solar anomalies. Scientists gave interviews, each contradicting the other, but repeating one message: it was natural, not supernatural. News anchors mocked those who called it prophecy, labeling them fanatics. The goal was clear: not to convince, but to wear people down until doubt settled in their hearts. In classrooms, teachers warned students not to listen to religious hysteria. Universities offered entire courses titled Mass Psychology, Understanding the Darkness Phenomenon. Movies were released within weeks, portraying the 3 days as science fiction, ridiculing families praying in candlelight. Late-night comedians joked, "Guess what? Jesus forgot to pay the light bill." America laughed, but deep down the memory still burned. Write in the comments, "I will not forget the truth." Because when the enemy tries to erase memory, testimony becomes the shield. Brothers and sisters, the deception was subtle but powerful. Families who had prayed began to feel embarrassed. Parents told children, "Don't talk about what we saw. People will laugh at us." Teenagers hid their rosaries, afraid of ridicule in school. Pastors softened their sermons, worried about losing their congregations. The deception worked not by denying the event, but by making people ashamed to speak of it. In Washington, lawmakers proposed resolutions declaring the 3 days a global natural anomaly. They wanted to write the deception into history books. In California, prayer groups were banned from gathering in parks. In New York, religious leaders were mocked on live television, accused of preying on fear. The louder the faithful spoke, the harsher the resistance became. But brothers and sisters, the faithful remnant stood firm. In small towns across the Midwest, prayer circles grew even larger. Families refused to hide their candles, placing them in windows at night as signs of defiance. In the South, stadiums filled again, this time not just with believers but with skeptics seeking answers. Witnesses stood on stages and said boldly, "I was there. I saw the darkness. I heard the voices. I know the truth." And every testimony broke the enemy's chains of doubt. Miracles continued to confirm the faithful. In Kentucky, a young girl who had been mute spoke for the first time while holding a rosary. In Texas, a farmer's barren fields burst with crops after he consecrated his land to Mary. In New Jersey, entire families converted after watching their grandmother survive cancer by clinging to prayer during the blackout. These miracles could not be erased, no matter how hard the deception tried. Write in the comments, "My family is a witness." Because every home that survived in faith carries a testimony America cannot silence. The Virgin had warned, the enemy will try to confuse even the faithful. Stay rooted in prayer. Discern what bears peace, humility, and love. That is where I am. And those words became the compass for believers. They remembered. True signs brought peace, not pride. True miracles produced humility, not spectacle. True testimonies drew people closer to God, not away from Him. That was the measure that cut through the lies. Still, the deception grew stronger. Hollywood prepared a blockbuster film, dramatizing the 3 days as a global disaster with no spiritual meaning. Schools distributed textbooks explaining it as an atmospheric blackout. Politicians declared it closed history. America was being taught to laugh at its own miracle. But the Virgin's mantle remained. And in the hearts of millions, no amount of deception could blot out the memory of her presence in the dark. They remembered the peace when they prayed. They remembered the terror when they didn't. They remembered St. Michael's cry echoing in their souls. Who is like God? Brothers and sisters, America stood once again at a choice. Would she believe the lie and erase her own miracle? Or would she cling to the truth, even when mocked and ridiculed? The 3 days had ended, but the battle had only shifted. Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, when the voices of deception grew loudest, when media and leaders mocked the faithful and called the 3 days just a natural blackout, heaven moved again. Because the Virgin had promised in Medjugorje, a sign will remain, undeniable, unshakable, visible to all. It will be my seal, my gift, and my warning. And so it happened, not in secret, not in shadows, but in front of the whole nation. It began in the Appalachian Mountains. On a quiet morning, hikers in West Virginia reported a luminous cross suspended in the sky above the ridges. At first they thought it was sunrise breaking strangely, but as the hours passed, the cross did not fade. It grew brighter, stretching miles long, visible from valleys and towns across the region. The light was not harsh, not blinding, but soft and radiant, filling hearts with peace. Within hours, news helicopters captured it. Drones streamed it live. Photos filled the internet. And what began as local whispers turned into a nationwide cry. Do you see it? It's in the sky. From Kentucky to North Carolina, from Virginia to Ohio, millions lifted their eyes and saw the same sign. A glowing cross of light, unshakable, unmoving, permanent. Write in the comments, I see your sign, Mary. Because faith multiplies when spoken aloud, and testimony gives courage to others who hesitate. Scientists rush to explain. Atmospheric refraction, rare light pillars, unusual weather phenomenon. But their theories crumbled when the sign stayed. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, shining as steady as the sun itself. Cameras showed no tricks, no projections, no human source. The light had no shadows, no wires, no machines. It simply was. And the miracles began. In small towns across Appalachia, families gathered under the sign and reported healings. A blind woman in Tennessee opened her eyes and saw the cross glowing above her. A paralyzed veteran in Kentucky stood for the first time in decades. In West Virginia, drug addicts fell to their knees in the streets weeping, throwing away their needles as they whispered prayers. The sign did not just hang in the sky, it cut through hearts. Brothers and sisters, America had no choice but to see. Networks tried to avoid broadcasting it, but the people streamed it themselves. Social media exploded. Millions watched, millions shared, millions knelt in their living rooms, whispering, "She is here." Even skeptics fell silent, because this was no illusion. This was the Virgin's seal. In Washington, leaders panicked. Some demanded that the sign be declared irrelevant. Others tried to censor coverage, but the sign was above them too. It stretched across the horizon, visible even from the Capitol's monuments. No decree could erase it, no law could cover it, no denial could hide it. The Virgin had marked the land. Write in the comments, "This nation is yours, Mary," because words spoken in faith bind hearts to the light, and America needs every voice of testimony. Brothers and sisters, families traveled for miles just to pray under the sign. Mountains became pilgrimage sites overnight. Highways filled with cars heading east, buses carrying prayer groups, caravans of families with rosaries in hand, and as they gathered, a sense of unity spread. It did not matter if you were Catholic or Protestant, rich or poor, young or old. The light did not divide, it called. The Virgin's presence was felt everywhere. Many testified that while kneeling under the glowing cross, they heard a voice in their hearts. "Do not fear, my Son is with you. Choose the light." And people responded with tears, with confessions, with reconciliations. America's soil was drenched with prayers as countless souls returned to God. And yet even with this undeniable sign, resistance remained. Some mocked louder, desperate to hold on to their pride. Activists shouted in the streets, claiming it was mass hysteria. Intellectuals called it psychological projection. But the sign remained, unmoving, as if heaven itself was saying, "Mock, if you will, but you cannot erase me." And dear brothers and sisters, this universal sign was a gift and a dividing line. For those who believed, it was peace, healing, confirmation. For those who resisted, it was judgment. No longer could America say, "We did not know." The sign burned above the land, permanent and clear. Brothers and sisters, friends of the light, when the luminous cross stretched across the Appalachian sky and the whole nation saw it, something ignited in the hearts of those who had endured the darkness with prayer. They realized this was not only a sign for comfort, it was a call to mission. The Virgin had not protected her children just so they could return to their old lives. She had preserved them so they could now bear witness to America. In towns across the Midwest, ordinary families began gathering their neighbors and sharing their stories. Fathers who had once been silent now spoke with fire about how prayer had carried them through. Mothers stood in churches telling how their blessed candles never burned out. Children, with voices innocent yet powerful, testified to hearing angels whisper, "Do not be afraid." Each testimony spread like sparks across dry grass, igniting faith in countless hearts. Write in the comments, "I am a witness," because every declaration joins this movement of testimony, building an army of light across the nation. Brothers and sisters, prayer groups became missionary outposts. In Texas, stadiums once used for sports now filled with prayer rallies. In Ohio, neighborhoods turned sidewalks into chapels, with rosaries prayed nightly under streetlights. In Louisiana, families gathered in front yards, welcoming strangers to join their prayer circles. The Virgin's army was not dressed in uniforms or armed with weapons. It was made of ordinary Americans holding rosaries, carrying Bibles, glowing with the peace of those who had survived the trial. The enemy did not sit idle. Media ridiculed these witnesses, calling them superstitious or unstable. Some lost jobs for speaking openly. Students were mocked in classrooms. Pastors were warned to tone down the hysteria. Yet the witnesses could not be silenced because they were not speaking theories. They were telling what they had lived, and lived testimony is unshakable. Brothers and sisters, miracles continued to follow the witnesses. In California, a group of young adults who had prayed during the darkness traveled city to city, and wherever they spoke, healings erupted. In Michigan, a veteran shared how St. Michael appeared at his door during the blackout. The entire parish wept, and many converted on the spot. In Florida, children led a rosary procession down the streets of Miami, and dozens of strangers fell to their knees, joining them without hesitation. Write in the comments, "Send me Mary," because your words become a prayer, and your prayer becomes a mission. The Virgin's presence was strong. Many witnesses testified to dreams and inner locutions where Mary's voice guided them. "Go there, speak here, do not fear." And when they obeyed, doors opened. Skeptics softened, entire families converted. The witnesses were not preaching themselves, they were living vessels of her light. Brothers and sisters, America was changing. Not by laws passed in Congress, not by executive orders, but by living testimonies whispered at dinner tables, spoken in coffee shops, shouted in stadiums. It was not a revolution of politics, but of prayer. Not a movement of anger, but of mercy. And yet, persecution sharpened. In New York, prayer rallies were broken up. In California, activists tried to drown out processions with shouting. In Washington, lawsuits mounted against churches accused of spreading hysteria. But none of it stopped the witnesses. Like embers carried by the wind, they spread everywhere, small, persistent, unstoppable. Brothers and sisters, the Virgin was gathering her army, and America was its battlefield. These witnesses were not chosen for their strength or eloquence. They were chosen because they had believed, because when the darkness came, they lit their candles and prayed. And now their mission was clear: to lead others into the same light.